My fiancé spent our $87,000 house down payment on a revenge engagement party to upstage his ex-girlfriend's viral celebration. Then his ex called me with a folder full of evidence that he'd done this to 3 other women before me. When my fiancé Alex threw me a surprise engagement party, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. 200 guests at the Rosewood Country Club, a string quartet, champagne towers everywhere. My coworker Sarah kept gushing about how romantic it was. This must have cost a fortune, she whispered. Your fiancé really loves you. Alex just smiled and pulled me closer. Nothing's too good for my future wife. Been planning this for months, but something felt off. Alex kept staring across the room at table 12 where Jessica sat with her new fiancé. Jessica was Alex's ex from 2 years ago, who my father-in-law, who also happened to be my boss, insisted on inviting. The whole night, Alex acted weird. Whenever Jessica got house wine, Alex ordered more champagne. When Jessica took pictures, Alex dragged me to the same spots for better ones. During the speeches, Alex actually stopped mid-sentence to acknowledge Jessica's table. So wonderful that everyone could join us tonight, especially those who doubted our love. 3 days later, I went to transfer money for our house closing. We were buying this perfect place with a basement apartment for my pregnant sister Emma. The account was empty. Not just low, but completely empty. $87,000 gone. I called the bank thinking it was a mistake. The woman on the phone sounded confused. According to our records, someone withdrew everything 2 weeks ago. She offered to email me the withdrawal slip. I drove home shaking. Found Alex on the couch flipping through party photos on the phone. Look at this one, Alex said. The lighting is perfect. Everyone says we look like celebrities. We need to talk, I said. The house money is gone. Alex didn't even look up. What about it? The entire down payment. It's all gone. Where is it? Oh, that. I used it for the party. Alex kept scrolling like we were discussing groceries. You spent $87,000 on one night. My voice cracked. It was worth it. Everyone's still talking about it. The country club wants us to join their planning committee now. And before I could respond, I got the call. It was my sister, crying her eyes out. The real estate agent says we need the money by Friday, or we lose the house. I hung up feeling sick. Emma was counting on that apartment with a baby coming, and now she had nowhere to go. That's when Alex's mother walked in using her spare key. She must have been listening because she jumped right in defending her child. She said I should be grateful someone like Alex even noticed me. Alex stood up, finally putting the phone down. Jessica's engagement party at the Four Seasons was all anyone talked about for months. 2 million people saw it online. Everyone said she won the breakup. Do you know how that made me look? So it was true. My entire future had been stolen to compete with an ex. When I said as much, Alex called me dramatic and explained they'd invested in our social standing. Apparently the party planner promised it would go viral. They'd even hired a PR team to make sure. I felt dizzy. A PR team. They'd hired publicists with our house money. Alex's mother nodded along as Alex complained about my middle-class thinking being exhausting. She added this was exactly why they'd worried about Alex dating beneath their social circle. If you loved me, you'd understand why this mattered, Alex said. Stop being so dramatic about money. We can always get another house. My sister would be homeless on Friday. My credit was ruined. We'd worked 2 years saving that money and it was gone in one night. This was supposed to be the love of my life. Alex dismissed my concerns, saying Emma would figure something out and that neighborhood was beneath us anyway. Jessica's new place is in a much better zip code, then picked up the phone again to scroll through more party photos. Though I heard she only had 150 guests. We had 200. I walked to our bedroom and started throwing clothes in a bag. Alex followed by switching between trying to apologize and blaming me for overreacting. Kept saying this was why they'd had to take control of our finances because I didn't understand how society worked. Emma picked me up 20 minutes later. As we drove away, she told me she'd worried when Alex insisted on meeting with all our wedding vendors alone. Something felt wrong when they kept asking me about your ex. The next months were brutal. Lost the house, obviously. My credit tanked when I discovered Alex had opened 3 credit cards in my name. My hands stayed raw from cleaning chemicals and coffee burns. Meanwhile, Alex started dating some trust fund kid and kept throwing parties. Every month, something new. Their birthday bash. A random Tuesday celebration. Always at expensive venues while I counted quarters for gas money. And through it all, I just sat back and let it happen. Because I had an ace up my sleeve. One that not even a rich girl could save him from. I opened my laptop that night while Emma slept on the couch. The folder labeled wedding planning stared back at me from the desktop. Inside were 2 years of meticulous documentation. Bank statements showing every withdrawal Alex made. Screenshots of text messages discussing vendor payments. Credit card applications with forged signatures. Mrs. Chen from the country club's accounting department had been quietly helping me gather evidence after she noticed discrepancies in their billing system. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number calling at 2:17 a.m. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Alex's voice came through slurred and angry. The background noise suggested a bar or party. They rambled about seeing the little green dot next to my name on Instagram stories. Apparently, I'd accidentally viewed one of their posts earlier. They accused me of stalking, of being bitter about the engagement party. I stayed calm and thanked them for teaching me about forensic accounting. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds before their breathing quickened audibly. Emma waddled into my room just then, one hand on her 8-month pregnant belly. She couldn't sleep again. Her eyes went wide when she saw my laptop screen displaying bank records with highlighted transactions. She gasped and asked if I was finally going after Alex. The phone line went dead. Within minutes, notifications started flooding my screen. Password reset attempts on our old shared cloud storage. Login attempts on the joint email we'd used for wedding planning. Security alerts from 3 different financial platforms. I changed every password while Emma made chamomile tea in the kitchen. Her hands shook as she poured hot water into mugs. She'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. My phone lit up with a text from Malik, our mutual friend who lived across town. He'd attached a screenshot from his Ring doorbell camera showing Alex at his front door at 3 a.m. The timestamp showed it was taken just minutes ago. Alex was asking about my old bank statements, claiming they needed them for tax purposes. I saved the screenshot and texted Alex directly, asked if they were looking for something specific, mentioned that Malik said they seemed stressed. The response was immediate. Alex started messaging everyone in our old friend group. I watched the activity in our group chats as red receipts popped up one after another. The panic was obvious in the rapid-fire messages. Sarah from work texted me within minutes. Alex had called her crying, claiming I was stalking and harassing them. She wanted to know what was really happening. I forwarded her a single document, the credit card statement showing Alex had charged our entire engagement party to a card opened in my name without my permission. The timestamp on the fraudulent application was clear. Sarah's response came fast. 2 words that validated everything I'd been working toward. The next morning, I went to my usual coffee shop before work. My manager pulled me aside and mentioned something odd. Alex's mother had called the store trying to get my schedule, claiming there was a family emergency. She'd remembered where I worked from when Alex and I were together. I thanked him for letting me know and got back to work. During my break, I scrolled through old text messages I'd saved. Found one from Alex sent during our relationship where they obsessed over Jessica's engagement party views. 300,000 people had watched the video. Alex needed to hit that number no matter what it took. 2 days later, Emma had a prenatal yoga class. She'd mentioned it on Facebook the week before. As we walked to the car afterward, Alex appeared in the parking lot. They approached with fake concern, asking about Emma's pregnancy and apologizing for everything that happened. Emma started hyperventilating. The yoga instructor noticed and intervened, helping Emma to a bench. But in the confusion, Alex managed to slip something into Emma's purse before we drove away. At home, Emma found the note. The handwriting was unmistakably Alex's. It claimed I was having a mental breakdown and questioned whether it was safe for Emma's baby to be around me. Emma crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash, but I retrieved it and added it to my evidence folder. That evening, I met Marcus at a diner downtown. He'd been the bartender at the country club during our engagement party. He looked nervous as he slid into the booth across from me. Marcus revealed something I hadn't discovered yet. Alex never actually paid the country club for the party. They'd charged everything to a corporate card from Alex's mother's company without authorization. The club was still trying to collect payment months later. I thanked Marcus and added his statement to my growing file. The next day at Trader Joe's, I noticed 3 former mutual friends in the cereal aisle. They saw me and immediately turned the other way, pretending to be fascinated by granola options. Alex had clearly been spreading stories about me. Something feels really calculated about Alex waiting until after that party to reveal where the money went. They knew exactly what they were doing by keeping those withdrawal records hidden for 2 weeks while spending every penny on competing with Jessica's engagement party. I checked Instagram that night and noticed something disturbing. Alex's recent party photos included several of my former coworkers. They were systematically infiltrating my professional network. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane, my college roommate. She wanted to meet at the coffee shop near St. Mark's Church after her volunteer shift. Her message said Alex's story wasn't adding up. I met her the next afternoon at our old spot. Diane looked tired as she stirred her latte. She revealed that Alex had borrowed $5,000 from her last year for a supposed medical emergency. The emergency never existed. Alex had used the money for a vacation. Diane's phone started buzzing while we talked. Alex had found out about our meeting. The texts came fast and threatening. Alex reminded Diane about the plagiarism incident in grad school, threatening to expose it if she kept talking to me. Diane's face went pale as she forwarded me the threats. She hadn't realized Alex had been keeping that information as ammunition. I reassured her and added the threatening messages to my evidence folder. The pattern was becoming clearer with each passing day. Alex's next move caught me off guard. They started dating my hairdresser Maria's son. 2 weeks later, they showed up at the salon during my standing appointment. I watched them together in the waiting area. The signs were obvious. Expensive gifts after only 2 weeks of dating. Constant texting. Alex already talking about moving in together. The same love-bombing pattern I'd experienced. Maria pulled me aside while my color processed. She mentioned that something felt off about the relationship. Alex kept steering conversations toward questions about me. I carefully explained the pattern of financial abuse I'd discovered. Maria's face hardened as she listened. She promised to talk to her son that night. The next day, I got a screenshot from Maria's son. Alex had texted him claiming Maria was poisoning him against the relationship just like I had. My credit monitoring app sent an alert that afternoon. Someone was trying to open a new credit card using my social security number. The application used information from our old joint tax returns. I showed the alert to Emma's husband Tom when he got home from work. He'd been skeptical about my plans until that moment. Seeing the attempted identity theft in real time made him furious. Tom worked in banking and had connections. He made some calls and traced the IP address of the fraudulent application. It came from Alex's mother's house. Mrs. Chen reached out to me that week. The country club had fired her for questioning the unpaid party charges, but she'd kept copies of all the documentation before leaving. She wanted to meet. We met at a Panera near her house. She maintained professional composure as she slid a USB drive across the table. Everything was there. Invoices, emails, payment records showing the pattern of theft. Emma's due date was 3 weeks away. The clock was ticking. If I was going to act, it had to be soon. That night, I got a direct message on Instagram from Jessica, Alex's ex who had been at our engagement party. Her message was simple but loaded with meaning. She needed to talk about Alex. The memorial fund wasn't the only thing. I started to realize the scope of what I was uncovering went far deeper than just my story. The wine bar Jessica suggested was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. She arrived looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes matching mine. We sat in a corner booth away from the windows. Jessica pulled out a folder thick with papers. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were bank statements, credit reports, and handwritten notes spanning 3 years. The pattern was identical to mine. Joint accounts drained. Credit cards opened without permission. Loans taken out using forged signatures. But there was more. Jessica showed me receipts from her grandmother's memorial service. Alex had convinced the dying woman to sign over $15,000 for supposed medical bills. The money went to a vacation in Cabo instead. Jessica had discovered this while settling the estate. I felt sick looking at the evidence. My situation suddenly seemed less unique and more like part of a serial pattern. Jessica explained how Alex's mother had helped cover it up, threatening to ruin Jessica's reputation if she went public. We spent 2 hours comparing notes. The similarities were disturbing. Alex had used the same lines, the same tactics, even the same restaurants for dates. The love bombing phase lasted exactly 3 months before the financial requests started. Jessica's new fiancé picked her up afterward. He nodded at me knowingly. Jessica had told him everything, and he'd encouraged her to reach out after hearing about my situation through mutual friends. I drove home with my mind racing. 4 victims now, including Maria's son. The total stolen amount exceeded $200,000 across all of us. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was systematic. Emma was organizing baby clothes when I got back. Her due date loomed closer each day. She looked up from folding tiny onesies and immediately noticed my expression. I showed her Jessica's evidence. Tom arrived home to find us surrounded by papers on the living room floor. Bank statements, credit reports, text messages, and timelines spread out like a crime scene investigation. He sat down heavily and started reading. His banking experience proved invaluable. Tom identified patterns we'd missed. The timing of each theft corresponded with major life events: engagements, pregnancies, job promotions, family deaths. Alex struck when victims were most vulnerable and distracted. We worked until midnight organizing everything chronologically. Tom suggested hiring a forensic accountant to create an official report. The cost would be significant, but he insisted on covering it. Family protects family, he said. The next morning, Alex's latest victim called Maria crying. $8,000 in charges had appeared on credit cards he didn't know existed. The applications were submitted just 3 weeks after they'd started dating. Maria's son was devastated. I met with him that afternoon at a Starbucks. He looked shell-shocked as he showed me the statements. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, jewelry, all charged to cards in his name. Alex had memorized his social security number from a form he'd carelessly left out. We went to the bank together. The fraud department took his report seriously, especially when I showed them my similar case. They started an investigation immediately and helped him freeze his credit. Maria texted me constantly with updates. She'd found more evidence in her son's apartment. Blank checks missing from his checkbook. His passport mysteriously relocated. Tax documents that had been photographed. The forensic accountant Tom hired was thorough. She requested everything from all 4 victims: bank statements, credit reports, tax returns, even phone records. The scope of work was massive, but she assured us it would create an undeniable paper trail. I started a group chat with all the victims. We named it simply Support Group. Jessica was hesitant at first, still traumatized from Alex's mother's threats, but Maria's son's situation convinced her. We couldn't let this continue. Diane joined after I assured her we'd protect her grad school secret. She'd been carrying guilt about the plagiarism for years, but we helped her see she was a victim too. Alex had weaponized her mistake. The group chat became our lifeline. We shared evidence, compared notes, and supported each other through the emotional toll. Maria's son discovered more fraudulent charges daily. Jessica found old emails showing Alex's manipulation tactics. Diane remembered other friends who'd lent Alex money. 3 days before Emma's due date, we had our first group meeting in person. Tom and Emma hosted at their house. Seeing everyone together was powerful. We weren't alone anymore. The forensic accountant presented her preliminary findings. The pattern was clear and damning. 7 years of financial exploitation across 4 confirmed victims. Possibly more we hadn't found yet. The methods were consistent, almost formulaic. Alex had been monitoring our group's formation. The harassment started subtly. Friend requests from fake social media accounts. Hang-up calls from blocked numbers. Messages to our employers asking about our mental stability. Maria's son received the worst treatment. Alex created a fake dating profile using his photos, sending explicit messages to random people. His professional reputation was at stake. We helped him document everything and report it to the platforms. I noticed cars driving slowly past Emma's house at odd hours. The same sedan appeared multiple times. Tom installed security cameras and caught clear footage of Alex's mother's car circling the block. The pressure intensified as our evidence grew stronger. Alex's mother called Tom's workplace, claiming he was embezzling funds. Fortunately, Tom's boss knew him well enough to dismiss the accusation, but it showed their desperation. My manager at the coffee shop mentioned more strange calls. People claiming to be health inspectors, asking about my hygiene practices. Former customers suddenly complaining about service from months ago. The pattern was obvious, but we kept building our case. The forensic accountant found something crucial. Alex had used the same IP address for multiple fraudulent applications. The digital fingerprint linked all our cases together definitively. Emma went into labor 2 weeks early. I was meeting with Jessica when Tom called. We rushed to the hospital, my laptop bag still full of evidence documents. Life doesn't pause for justice. The labor lasted 14 hours. I stayed by Emma's side, fielding messages from our support group between contractions. Between contractions and credit fraud discoveries, this birth timing is something else. Imagine explaining to the baby years later that mommy was in labor while auntie was tracking down a con artist's IP address. Maria's son had discovered another credit card. Jessica found receipts from her grandmother's account. The evidence kept mounting even as new life entered the world. Emma's daughter arrived healthy and perfect. Holding my niece for the first time, I felt the weight of what we were fighting for. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about protecting the future. While Emma recovered, I worked from the hospital room. The forensic accountant sent her final report. 200 pages of meticulously documented financial abuse. Every transaction traced. Every pattern identified. Every victim's story corroborated. Alex's mother made her biggest mistake then. She tried to access her company's retirement fund, needing money to maintain their lifestyle. But the fund administrator noticed discrepancies. An internal audit revealed forged signatures on multiple documents. The company's investigation uncovered what we'd suspected. Alex had been using corporate cards for personal expenses for years. Their mother had been covering it up, moving money between accounts to hide the theft. I got a call from Mrs. Chen, who still had contacts at the country club. Alex's mother had been caught trying to submit falsified invoices for our engagement party, attempting to make the company pay retroactively. The house of cards was collapsing. Alex's trust fund friend dumped them after mysterious charges appeared on their credit cards. The country club revoked their membership after reviewing the full scope of unpaid bills. Our support group met again, this time at the church where Diane volunteered. We had a decision to make. How far did we want to take this? Legal action would be expensive and traumatic, but letting it go meant Alex would find new victims. Maria spoke first. Her son was still dealing with identity theft issues. She wanted Alex stopped. Jessica agreed, her grandmother's memory driving her forward. Diane worried about her secret being exposed, but stood with us. I looked around the room at these brave people. We'd all been manipulated, stolen from, threatened, but together we were stronger than our abuser. Together we could end this pattern. Tom had been researching options. Civil suits were possible, but complicated. Criminal charges required police involvement, which meant everything would become public. We needed another way. That's when Alex's mother reached out to me directly. She wanted to meet, claiming she had a proposal. Against everyone's advice, I agreed, but I wasn't going alone. We met at a neutral location, the bank where this all started. I brought Tom and the forensic accountant. She brought her lawyer. The security guard who'd helped me that first day recognized me and nodded supportively. Alex's mother looked older, stress etching new lines on her face. She'd discovered the full extent of Alex's activities only recently. The forged checks, the stolen retirement funds, the pattern of victims. Her enabling had created a monster. She proposed a deal. Full restitution to all victims in exchange for our silence. No public exposure, no criminal charges. She'd personally guarantee the payments and force Alex into intensive therapy. I asked for time to consider. Our group needed to decide together. This wasn't just my choice anymore. We'd built something bigger than individual justice. We'd built a coalition. The group met that evening at Tom and Emma's house. Emma held her daughter while we debated. Some wanted public accountability. Others just wanted their money back and to move on. The discussion was emotional but respectful. We voted. Unanimous decision for structured restitution with conditions. Mandatory therapy for Alex. Financial monitoring by their mother. And most importantly, if any new victims emerged, all bets were off. I called Alex's mother with our terms. She agreed immediately. Relief evident in her voice. Her lawyer would draw up the agreements. Each victim would have a legally binding repayment plan. But Alex wasn't done fighting. The fake social media accounts multiplied. Harassment escalated. They tried accessing Jessica's trust fund using stolen information. Maria's son received threatening messages hourly. We documented everything meticulously. Each threat, each hack attempt, each false accusation. The evidence folder grew thicker. Alex was digging their own grave. The breaking point came when Alex sent photos from Emma's prenatal yoga class to Tom's workplace. The implications about Emma's mental stability during pregnancy crossed a line. Tom forwarded everything to Alex's mother. Within hours, Alex's access to family money was completely frozen. Their credit cards canceled. Their apartment lease terminated. The consequences were swift and severe. Our group supported each other through the final negotiations. The lawyer presented agreements to each victim. The terms were clear. Full restitution within 2 years. Monthly payments monitored by the court. Any violation would trigger immediate legal action. Alex made one last desperate attempt. They created a website claiming we were a conspiracy against them. Posted edited screenshots trying to paint themselves as the victim. But our evidence was overwhelming and unedited. The forensic accountant's report became crucial. Every transaction documented. Every pattern established. Every victim's story corroborated by independent evidence. Alex's lies crumbled against our truth. I signed my agreement at the same bank where I'd discovered the theft. The security guard who'd remembered that day witnessed my signature. Full circle from victim to victor. Each group member signed their agreements. Maria's son would be repaid within 6 months. Jessica's grandmother's estate would receive full restitution. Diane's loan would be returned with interest. My stolen money would come back in monthly installments. But more importantly, we'd created something permanent. Our support group continued meeting monthly. We shared resources about financial literacy, identity protection, and recognizing manipulation tactics. Alex entered therapy under court supervision. Their mother ensured compliance by controlling all financial access. The therapist specialized in financial crimes and personality disorders. Progress reports were required. I returned to work with a new perspective. My manager, impressed by my handling of the situation, offered me a promotion. Anyone who could track fraud that well belonged in management, he said. Our story spread organically through the community, not through gossip or revenge, but through quiet warnings. Friends of friends reached out, sharing their own concerns about suspicious partners. We'd created a network of protection. Emma's daughter grew stronger each day. I watched my niece sleep and thought about the future we'd secured for her. She'd grow up in a world where we'd stood up to manipulation and won. The first restitution payments arrived on schedule. I stared at my bank balance, seeing money that had been stolen returned. But it meant more than dollars. It meant justice. It meant closure. It meant we'd won. Our group celebrated quietly at the church cafe where Diane volunteered. No champagne towers or string quartets, just coffee and homemade cookies and the satisfaction of justice served. 3 months into the payment plan, Alex tried to manipulate their therapist, claimed mental illness excused their actions, but the therapist saw through it, documenting the attempted manipulation in official reports. Alex's mother enforced consequences immediately. Therapy sessions increased. Financial monitoring tightened. Any deviation from the plan meant complete cutoff from family support. Our support group evolved beyond our original purpose. We started teaching financial literacy at the community center, sharing our stories to help others recognize warning signs, building shields for future victims. Maria's son fully recovered his credit within 6 months. He met someone new, someone honest, and our group helped him verify their financial integrity. We'd learned to trust, but verify. Jessica used her restitution to properly memorialize her grandmother, a scholarship fund for nursing students, helping others avoid financial vulnerability. Her grandmother's legacy transformed from victim to protector. Diane paid off her student loans with her returned money. The weight of debt and blackmail lifted simultaneously. She continued volunteering at the church, now teaching financial planning classes. I put my restitution toward Emma's daughter's college fund, breaking cycles of financial vulnerability for the next generation, ensuring she'd never face what we had. The community center asked me to lead regular workshops, teaching people to recognize financial abuse, protect their assets, and build support networks. Our pain had become purpose. Alex completed their mandatory therapy, but true change seemed doubtful. They maintained they'd done nothing wrong, just borrowed from willing partners. But the legal agreements held firm. Their mother continued monitoring, having learned the hard cost of enabling. She attended her own therapy, processing how her protection had become harmful, growth happening on all sides. Our monthly support meetings became less about trauma and more about triumph. We shared successes, celebrated milestones, and welcomed new members who'd heard our story. A young woman approached me after one workshop. Her partner exhibited similar patterns to Alex. We helped her protect her assets, document concerns, and exit safely, the cycle broken before it could begin. Tom reflected on how our family had grown stronger through crisis. Emma's daughter would know her aunt as someone who fought back, who protected others, who turned pain into power. The final restitution payment was scheduled for 6 months out. Soon, our legal connection to Alex would end. But our connection to each other, our network of protection and support, would continue indefinitely. These legal agreements feel awfully convenient. Everyone just signs papers and agrees to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars. The mother's sudden cooperation after years of enabling makes me wonder what she's really protecting. I looked at my laptop one evening, the wedding planning folder still on the desktop, but now it contained something different. Not evidence of theft, but blueprints for building a safer community. We'd started as victims isolated by shame and manipulation. We'd become advocates united by courage and justice. Alex's legacy wasn't the money they stole, but the protection network we built. My phone buzzed with a message from our support group. Another workshop request. Another person seeking help. Another chance to transform our trauma into someone else's shield. The coffee shop where I worked became an informal safe space. People knew they could find support there. Financial financial advice, or just understanding from someone who'd survived similar experiences. Alex's attempts at rehabilitation remained superficial, but their ability to harm had been neutralized. Financial monitoring, legal agreements, and most importantly, a community aware of their patterns. Our story became a cautionary tale told in financial planning seminars and relationship counseling sessions, not for revenge, but for prevention. Knowledge as protection against predators. Emma often brought her daughter to our workshops. Even as an infant, she was surrounded by people who'd fought for justice, who'd refused to be victims, who'd built something better from betrayal. The support group expanded beyond our original 4. We helped dozens of people recognize concerning patterns, protect their assets, and find strength in shared experience, each story validating our fight. As the final payment approached, I felt not triumph, but transformation. The money mattered less than what we'd built, a network that would outlast any individual villain, a shield for the vulnerable. The bank meeting happened on a gray Thursday morning. All parties assembled in the same conference room where I'd first discovered the empty account. Alex arrived with their lawyer, shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Their mother sat separately, maintaining distance from her child while clutching a folder of financial documents. Our group filled one side of the table. Jessica gripped her grandmother's memorial photo. Maria's son reviewed his credit monitoring app one last time. Diane twisted her volunteer badge nervously. Tom stood behind Emma's chair as she nursed the baby. The forensic accountant laid out 7 years of documentation across the conference table. Bank statements formed neat columns. Credit reports showed the pattern of identity theft. Forged signatures appeared in chronological order. The evidence created an undeniable timeline of systematic financial abuse. Alex's lawyer examined each document carefully. His expression shifted from skeptical to concerned to resigned as the scope became clear. He leaned toward Alex and whispered urgently. Alex shook their head repeatedly, gesturing dismissively at our evidence. The bank's fraud investigator joined us, adding their official findings to the pile. They'd traced the fraudulent transactions through multiple accounts. The digital footprints all led back to Alex. Their investigation corroborated every claim we'd made. Security footage from the bank played on a laptop screen. The same guard who'd helped me that first day had preserved the recordings. Alex appeared multiple times, making large cash withdrawals from accounts they shouldn't have accessed. The timestamps matched our documented thefts perfectly. Alex's mother finally spoke up, sliding her own folder across the table. Corporate credit card statements showed years of unauthorized charges. Forged expense reports bore Alex's handwriting. The company's internal audit had uncovered everything. She'd been protecting Alex while they stole from her too. The lawyer advised Alex to accept our terms immediately. The alternative meant criminal prosecution, public exposure, and certain conviction given the evidence. Alex continued protesting their innocence, claiming we'd all willingly given them money. I pulled out my phone and showed the attempted identity theft alerts from just that week. Even while negotiating, Alex had tried accessing my credit again. The lawyer's face darkened as he reviewed the fresh evidence of ongoing criminal activity. Our forensic accountant presented the final calculation. Total theft across all victims exceeded $200,000. The repayment plan would require monthly installments for 2 years. Interest would be added to compensate for the time value of money stolen. Alex's mother confirmed she'd personally guarantee every payment. Her retirement account would serve as collateral. If Alex missed even one payment, she'd cover it immediately. The shame on her face showed she finally understood the monster she'd enabled. The bank's legal team drafted binding agreements. Each victim would receive a customized repayment schedule. The documents included provisions for continued therapy, financial monitoring, and immediate legal action if Alex contacted any of us again. Maria's son would be repaid first due to the recent theft and ongoing identity recovery needs. His agreement specified 6 months of accelerated payments. The relief on his face was palpable as he reviewed the terms. Jessica's grandmother's estate came next in priority. The money stolen from a dying woman would be returned with additional damages. Jessica clutched the memorial photo tighter as she read through her agreement. Diane's repayment included compensation for the emotional distress of being blackmailed. The agreement specifically sealed all information about her past, protecting her from further exploitation. She signed with a steady hand. My agreement came last, the largest amount requiring the full 2-year term. But seeing the legal commitment in writing made it real. The money would return. Justice would be served. The nightmare would end. Alex signed each agreement with visible reluctance. Their hands shook as they wrote their name repeatedly. Their mother watched grimly, ensuring they completed every signature. No escape routes remained. The bank notarized every document. Copies went to all parties, the court, and the monitoring therapist. The agreements became public record, preventing Alex from hiding behind lies anymore. Their pattern of abuse was officially documented. We left the bank as a group, supporting each other through the emotional aftermath. Emma's baby fussed in the carrier, needing a feeding. Life continued even as we closed this chapter, the ordinary mixing with the extraordinary. That evening, our support group met at the community center for our regular session. New faces had joined, people who'd heard our story and recognized similar patterns in their own relationships. We'd become inadvertent educators through our pain. I led the discussion on recognizing financial abuse warning signs. The room filled with note-taking as I outlined the red flags we'd missed. Love bombing followed by financial requests. Isolation from support systems. Gaslighting about money management. A young woman raised her hand, describing her boyfriend's recent behavior. He'd memorized her PIN after only dating 3 weeks. Small amounts kept disappearing from her account. The pattern sounded frighteningly familiar. We helped her create a safety plan that night. Change all passwords immediately. Document every suspicious transaction. Open a separate account he didn't know about. Build evidence while protecting assets. The same steps we'd wished we'd known. 3 days later, the first repayment hit my account. Seeing the deposit felt surreal after months of struggling, but I immediately transferred it to Emma's daughter's college fund, building a future from the ashes of betrayal. Maria's son received his accelerated payments on schedule. Each deposit helped repair his damaged credit. He shared his progress with the group, showing how his score climbed monthly. Recovery was possible with persistence. The community center expanded our workshop schedule. Word spread organically about our financial literacy program. People came seeking practical advice from survivors who understood the emotional complexity of financial abuse. I developed a curriculum based on our experiences: how to maintain financial independence in relationships, red flags to watch for, resources for victims, legal options for recovery, each lesson drawn from hard-won knowledge. Alex's mandatory therapy reports arrived monthly. The therapist documented minimal progress, process. Alex maintained they were the real victim, persecuted for borrowing money, but the legal agreements held regardless of their denial. Their mother attended our workshops occasionally, sitting quietly in the back. She'd started her own journey of understanding how her enabling had caused harm. Her presence reminded us that abusers often had their own enablers. Local banks started referring customers to our workshops. They'd seen enough fraud cases to recognize the value of prevention education. We became an unofficial resource for financial abuse victims throughout the region. Emma brought her daughter to every session. Even as an infant, she absorbed the atmosphere of empowerment and protection. She'd grow up surrounded by people who'd fought back against manipulation and won. 6 months in, Jessica's grandmother's estate received full restitution. She used the money to establish a nursing scholarship at the local college. Students would receive financial support while learning to protect vulnerable patients from exploitation. The scholarship committee included our support group members. We reviewed applications looking for students who understood the intersection of caregiving and financial protection. Jessica's grandmother's legacy transformed from victim to guardian. Diane's student loans disappeared with her restitution payment. The weight of debt lifted simultaneously with the fear of blackmail. She expanded her volunteer work, teaching financial planning at the church's community programs. Our monthly meetings evolved from trauma processing to strategic planning. Well, nothing says justice served quite like Alex having to sign all those papers while their mom watches like a disappointed hall monitor, making sure they finish their punishment homework. How could we reach more potential victims? What resources did our community need? How could we transform our individual experiences into collective protection? A local attorney joined our team pro bono. She'd seen too many financial abuse cases end badly. Together, we created template documents for victims, power of attorney revocations, asset protection strategies, evidence collection guidelines. The workshops filled beyond capacity. We moved to larger rooms, then added weekend sessions. Each attendee potentially saved from financial exploitation. Each story shared preventing another victim. Maria's son met someone new through the workshops, another financial abuse survivor who understood the journey. They supported each other's credit recovery while building a relationship based on transparency and mutual protection. Year 1 ended with Alex attempting to manipulate the payment schedule. They claimed financial hardship despite their mother's guarantee. The court rejected the modification immediately. The agreements remained ironclad. Our support group celebrated the anniversary quietly. Coffee and homemade cookies at Diane's church. No fanfare, just recognition of how far we'd come, from isolated victims to empowered educators. The second year brought unexpected growth. Other communities requested our curriculum. We created training materials for facilitators. The program spread organically, each new location adapting our framework to their needs. I received a promotion at work, managing the coffee shop's finances. My boss recognized that anyone who could track fraud so meticulously belonged in financial management. Professional growth arising from personal trauma. Alex's patterns continued even under monitoring. They attempted romance scams online using fake profiles, but our network had grown. Victims found our resources quickly before significant damage occurred. Tom reflected on our family's transformation. What started as crisis became catalyst. Emma's daughter would inherit more than money. She'd inherit a legacy of resilience and community protection. The final months of repayment approached. Soon our legal connection to Alex would end, but the connections we'd built, the lives we'd touched, the future victims we'd protected, those would continue indefinitely. New members joined monthly, each bringing their own story of financial manipulation. We'd created something larger than our individual experiences, a permanent support structure for those navigating financial abuse. Local high schools requested presentations for seniors, teaching financial independence before they entered vulnerable transition periods. College, first jobs, early relationships, armor against future exploitation. The bank where everything started became a program partner. They funded printing costs for our educational materials. The security guard who'd remembered me that first day now referred customers to our workshops. As the final payment date approached, I felt profound transformation. Not just financial recovery, but personal evolution. From victim to advocate, from isolated to connected, from powerless to empowered. The last restitution payment arrived on schedule. 2 years of consistent deposits ending. But our work continued. The next workshop already scheduled. The next victim already reaching out. The cycle of protection perpetuating. Emma's daughter took her first steps at our meeting space, surrounded by people who'd stood up to manipulation, who'd refused victimhood, who'd built something beautiful from betrayal. Her inheritance secured not just financially, but emotionally. Our story became teaching material in local therapy programs. Counselors learned to recognize financial abuse patterns. Social workers gained resources for vulnerable clients. The ripple effects spread beyond our original scope. Alex completed their mandatory therapy unchanged, still claiming victimhood, still denying responsibility. But their ability to harm had been permanently curtailed. The community knew their patterns. Protection networks existed. I updated the wedding planning folder one last time. No longer evidence of theft, but blueprints for community protection. Templates, resources, contact lists, tools for the next person who discovered their partner's betrayal. 6 months later, I stood before another packed workshop. Emma's daughter played quietly with blocks in the corner. A young woman in the front row clutched bank statements with shaking hands. The cycle continuing, but with crucial differences. Now she wasn't alone. She had resources, support, and examples of successful recovery. She had a community ready to help her reclaim her power. She had proof that survival and justice were possible. I began the presentation with practiced calm, explaining recognition, documentation, protection, recovery. The same lessons learned through pain, now preventing others' suffering. Our trauma transformed into teaching. The young woman stayed after class. Her story echoed ours precisely. Love bombing, financial requests, gaslighting, theft. But she'd found us early. Only thousands lost, not tens of thousands. Identity still protected, future still salvageable. We surrounded her with support that night. Practical advice mixed with emotional validation. Phone numbers exchanged, safety plans created. Another potential victim transformed into empowered survivor. The community center director approached me afterward. They wanted to expand the program regionally, create facilitator training, develop online resources, scale our impact beyond local boundaries. I thought of Alex, probably seeking new victims despite monitoring, then thought of the dozens we'd helped, the hundreds we'd educated, the thousands who might find our resources, their legacy of harm dwarfed by our legacy of protection. Emma arrived to pick up her daughter. The toddler ran to her mother. together, babbling excitedly about the big people meeting. She'd grown up witnessing recovery, empowerment, community building. Her normal included fighting back against injustice. That night, I reviewed our impact metrics: 57 direct interventions, 300 workshop attendees, 15 facilitators trained, countless lives protected through education. The mathematics of transformation. Tom had started a financial protection fund for victims needing emergency assistance, seed money from his banking connections, support for those escaping abuse without resources. Another layer of community protection built. Maria's son became a peer counselor. His credit fully recovered, relationship healthy. He gave back by guiding new victims. His journey from victim to helper, inspiring others' recovery. Jessica's nursing scholarship recipients graduated, entering healthcare with deep understanding of financial vulnerability. They'd protect patients from exploitation. Her grandmother's memory living through their vigilance. Diane expanded the church's financial counseling program. Free services for abuse victims, volunteer attorneys providing documentation help, safe space for rebuilding after betrayal, faith community embracing practical protection. The final workshop of the year overflowed again. I recognized the look in newcomers' eyes, the same shock, shame, and desperation we'd carried, but also hope, because we stood before them as proof of survival. Alex faded to footnote in our larger story, their individual harm overwhelmed by collective healing. We'd built something they could never steal: community, purpose, power, protection that would outlast any predator. Thanks for letting me wonder about all these curious moments with you folks. Really makes you think about things differently when you share them together.